Guys, I am super psyched to have Dante Basco in the house. Incredibly talented actor, producer, writer. A lot of you know him as Zuko in Avatar: Last of the Airbenders. Last Airbender.
Avatar: Last Airbender. ATLA.
Thank you. And obviously, one of my favorites, Rufio in Hook. I remember being very excited to meet you at a con in Houston because Robin Williams has been my favorite actor of all time, and that movie I watched one too many times as a kid. So, dude, you're doing a ton of stuff right now. I'm amazed that you're always producing something. You do voice work. You're still an actor on camera, not still. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You started off as an actor when you were young, and then
I started as a dancer.
Tell me all.
Yeah. So my whole life in entertainment started out. I always say I started at the ground level of the entertainment industry, and the ground level for me was the actual ground. Like me and my brothers were street performers in the streets of San Francisco. We were b-boys in the heyday of hip hop, like the birth of hip hop, really, when it got to the West Coast, and we were in love with it. And I'm still in love with hip hop. Like in a lot of ways, I still consider myself a hip hop artist, and just didn't go the music route, went through the filmmaking route, but it's still definitely in line with the hip hop perspective, I think, on the world. But me and my brothers were b-boys. We were a group called the Street Freaks, and we became a very popular.
Your blood brothers, your literal brothers.
My literal brothers. And we were called the Street Freaks, and it was 4 brothers. And I was Poppin' Fresh. My name was Poppin' Fresh.
No, yeah. I love it, dude. Were your parents really artistic? Like all of you brothers and one sister are super creative. Like, how do you? Did it come from that, or they just infused you with like art and culture since you were really young?
Yeah, I think I come from a very blue collar family in the East Bay, a little town called Pittsburgh, California, like Pittsburgh with no H. And blue collar, man. I just, a lot of Filipinos and Italians and African Americans, Latinos, like that's Pittsburgh. It was kind of like
the planet.
Not founded, but it was kind of like a lot of World War II vets. My grandfather's World War II, and so a lot of vets live in the area, and that's our family. I grew up in the Phil-Am, which is the Filipino American Association, where we would do performances for the Christmas show, and it was kind of like my parents' social scene. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I can so see it.
Yeah. So we did a lot of shows and a lot of things like that. And that just kind of turned into us just like breakdancing. But my mom, to keep us out of the element that was around this, the neighborhood, whether it be gangs and drugs and all that kind of stuff, she always kept us just kind of busy doing stuff that she never had as a child.
Yeah.
And so always in piano lessons and karate lessons and traditional dancing lessons and tap dancing and gymnastics, like all this kind of stuff that we ended up all incorporating into breakdancing. When we got into breakdancing, we just fell in love with it. And the success of that, we became one of the top, like we were kids, right? So we became one of the top breakdancing groups in the Bay Area in the 80s, right? And so we won, like in a year's time, we had won like, I don't know, over 30 plus competitions on the weekends. And then we started getting paid by like San Francisco 49ers and all these other things. And we, other people would hire us to open up for people.
Wow.
Kennedy and Ice-T and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they were like, do you want to take the jump and like leave the Bay and go to, be these like, not big fish in the Bay, but like a known figure, like Bay Area heroes, and then take the jump and go to LA. And we were like, yeah, let's do it. I came to LA at 10, and I had been working and studying all the way up to that time. By the time I was 15, I was like a serious young actor. But I mean, I was auditioning and working the whole time. The first audition I ever auditioned for, I booked. I was like one of those stories. Like I walked in.
Damn you.
Yeah. And I played Native American in a show. And then I just continued to work the whole time. I was recurring on Wonder Years. I had a movie deal with Paramount. I did a film called Perfect Weapon, which is like a martial arts film with this dude named Jeff Speakman. So I was like a steadily working young actor.
Child
actor.
Yeah.
Actually, when I auditioned for Rufio, me and one of my brothers, Darian, we both had the audition the same day, rehearsing with each other and dressing up, before we got the audition. Yeah. There's pictures of that day of us, what we were wearing, like going to the audition.
Wow. Yeah. And were you, when you got cast and you started, I don't know if you had a lot of rehearsals, or were you intimidated to work with Spielberg and Robin Williams, or were you just like, dude, I'm here. You're 15. You almost don't have that fear, right?
No, I was totally not intimidated, but yeah, intimidated. No, I knew Like I've been studying since I was 10. I knew these guys. I studied these guys. Like when I went on the set, we grew up me and my brothers studied acting like religiously, in our life. Even as young kids, I studied for over 20 years. And so with the same teacher, and we were in it, like I knew who Hoffman was really well. When I got the audition and when I met Spielberg, Steven, we didn't even do the scene. We just talked about acting in film. I did this movie, Perfect Weapon. He's like, who's that character? What did you do in that movie? And I looked at him as a 15-year-old kid and I was like, I was a street urchin kid. I was living in the streets. I was like Ratso Rizzo. He's like, Ratso Rizzo? I'm like, yeah, Ratso Rizzo. And we were talking about Hoffman, that Ratso Rizzo is from Midnight Cowboy. And then we start talking about Midnight Cowboy. And he's like looking at me like, this kid's talking about Hoffman's. I know who these guys are. Not only do I know them, I know them. I watch their movies. Like understanding the history of where we're from. We were chasing giants. We were chasing Hoffman and Pacino and De Niro and Brando. And I mean, on the set, I'm doing Rufio, and the big note from Steven Spielberg was always like, he's like, cut, like, Dante, stop imitating Brando. I mean, he's yelling at me in front of everybody. Stop imitating Brando.
Obviously, everyone's favorite scene is when you throw the food and it's not food and then it turns into food. And you've used that as one of your branding things, right?
Yeah. It was a T-shirt thing. Well, with my merchandising stuff, we did a Never Grow Up sweater, and then we were thinking like how to do it, and then we were graphic designing all the food fight, and it's like, oh, it's the food fight scene for sure. It was so great.
Yeah.
And then we did the front, like the slot. I mean, the graphic design did the slot on my face, so it really was cool for the.
Was that incredibly fun to shoot?
It was incredibly fun. I mean, for everyone except for me, if you watch the movie, I'm like, Rufio's not in a good mood that day. So my memory of that scene is like, I was very, fighting with Robin and losing my boys. And my memory and my feeling is always like how you felt on the set that day and the mood you're in. And if you remember, Rufio was not in the whole food fight.
How did you feel when Diego Milano asked you to play a version of Rufio in Victor and Valentino?
It was hilarious. I mean, he's great. They sent me over the project and I was like, oh, this is super Lost Boy stuff. I love that. I mean, a character like Rufio is just great that it kind of survives. The energy of Rufio survives, years, decades later, and means so much to the generation that grew up with it, and as new generations finding it and connecting with it. I think as actors and as filmmakers, we all just want to be a part of projects and characters that kind of have some lasting, that means something to people.
So what does Zuko sound like? Because we have many people in the chat wanting a Zuko line.
A Zuko line? What do you guys want? That's rough, buddy. He sounds like that. He sounds like I'm the son of. I don't know. It's like weird because it's usually my voice. It's just me. It's like me going, "Hello, Zuko here." It's just me.
Zuko's got swag though, just like Dante. He's just like he's cool,
It's cool. He's angsty sometimes, for sure.
Well, he's a teen, right?
He's young. He's a teenager. He's 15.
Yeah. So look at you 15. Still playing freaking angsty teens. How did that role come about? Because then it leads you to write your memoir. You kept auditioning for a bunch of voiceovers and that was just one of them that you booked, or how?
Yeah, I think with the voiceover world, I just kind of tripped into it. Like I didn't come to town to be I'd be a voiceover actor. It wasn't even really, I came to town in 85 and voiceover was just like a very narrow lane. You know how the industry, come to town and I'm acting and dancing and doing all kinds of stuff. But little by little, you realize there's different, just different lanes where people at the end of the day catch checks. You can catch a check being in commercials, doing industrials. Industrials are just like movies for like short films for corporations that no one's ever going to see it, just in-house, and you're acting like. I did my first voiceover gig was years ago in the Goofy movie. This thing called the Goofy movie.
Yes, I'm going to get Jason Marsden on here soon. Son of Goofy, right?
Yes, Max. He played Max.
When did you decide to start writing a book about your life? Story, adventures.
Yeah, I have a book out there called From Rufio to Zuko, which you can, get on Amazon, of course. I just, it wasn't even my idea. There's a company called Not Occult Media which is a great indie press. And they're very cool, like Silver Lake crew. And I know them, and I'm in the literary world because I started DPL, the Poetry Lounge, which is the largest open mic venue kind of in the country.
Wow.
I started this poetry venue originally called DPL, Dante's Poetry Lounge. And I'm a part of the whole LA poetry scene since the 90s. And that became the inspiration, which became Def Poetry Jam on HBO, and went to Broadway, won a Tony. So DPL is, named after me, and I'm a part of the whole poetry scene. So Not a Cult, it's publishing a lot of books for poets in our community, and I'm part of the literary scene. So they approached me to do a book, and I was thinking I'd do another poetry book because I had another poetry book written before, but they were like, no, we want your story. I'm like, my story? And they're like, yeah. And then the owner of the publishing press, he pretty much pitched me, my book. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we want a story, a perspective in Hollywood from an Asian American's point of view. And
wow.
they're like, you're the kid that we all grew up with, so we want your story. So I was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. And you sign deals and stuff, and you go, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to write this book.
So
it's
what
cathartic.
happened?
No, I took trips before COVID. I'd fly to like Portland or New York, and I would just get an Airbnb and try to write. And it's a cool, quick read, and I'm not retired yet, so it's not like a tell-all. There's more chapters to be told in the book, but it was at a good place where I was going through a breakup, and I was, and I'm at the place in my life in between castings as you're growing up in the industry and trying to find out what you're doing, and also not just acting, but the world of producing and writing and directing is opening up to me. So and I'm still in a transitional place in my life, so it was a good place to kind of start to sit down and have some introspection.
So now let's tell the chat about the Fabulous Filipino Brothers, because that script to me, it reminded me a lot of magical realism that came out of Colombia with Garcia Marquez. I don't know if you've read his books.
Of course.
But I found and when I went to the Philippines for a con, I was like, oh man, we're so similar. Filipinos and Latinos were cousins,
Yeah.
We're the same people. So I loved the story, and I want you to tell them a little more about it because I'm super excited for it to come out.
Yeah, well, it's a movie I wrote with my brothers. It's called The Fabulous Filipino Brothers. It's my directorial debut, so it's my first time directing, and it's probably like 7th or 8th film I produced. So I've been producing like Asian American films for the last decade on top of stuff I'm doing in front of camera. And you're right, the Filipinos are they're the only Asian Latinos. We are the Asian Latinos. Like Spain's one colony in Asia was us. And so we're like, basically, we all know South America's all the Latinos, but we were that in Asia, the one colony of Spain in Asia. So there's a lot of similarities there. But it's basically a story surrounding a Filipino wedding. It's 4 brothers, my real brothers, Derek, Darian, Dante, and Dion. So it's 4 brothers, 4 vignettes, like a linear story told out of order, all surrounding a crazy, blue collar Filipino wedding. It's not Crazy Rich Asians, like blue collar broke Asians.
But I like that. It's relatable. You guys aren't hopping on yachts and blinging stuff up. It's just like, oh, you guys are real people. And you're a master at throwing parties and at hosting. One of the big, really fun events I went to at San Diego Comic-Con was your Rufio party. What did you call it? It was really cool.
I don't remember, but that was a good one. That was a fun one though. Yeah, back in, whatever. I have all these side businesses, side hustles. That's what we all have. And I'm
well, they're big hustles. It's not like you're selling popcorn on the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think I love the Comic-Con world, and I feel like such a guest within that world because I didn't necessarily grow up in like kind of the geek culture, but I've been so just welcomed. And as I kind of entered it now, I'm like, I feel more a part of what's going on because I've been around for years. But especially when I went and I started like going to Comic-Cons, and I didn't grow up doing Comic-Cons, but I was like, what can I bring to the world, And what I did, I grew up in the club scene in LA. Like all my friends are club kids. I grew up going to clubs. All my friends now, as we're older, own and run the clubs, or used to before COVID. And so I would just, I said, let me throw the party. Let me throw some parties for the club, for the Comic-Con kids, because like a real LA party, like to bring the real DJs in. Let's do it like we did one night. We did Sold Out Night and like, Supper Club, which is one of the premium clubs here in LA. And people are like, even the club owners were like, what's going on? Like, we'll give you the club. And then when it popped off, they're like, damn, I didn't know this scene was even happening.
dude, one day we should have. I feel like you're our adopted Overwatcher because you've been
I
to so
know.
many events where we're there. We just need you to be a voice on the game now.
I know I should do a voice thing. Tell the whole Overwatch fam I said hi. I miss everybody so much.
I will. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dante Basco. Thank you so much. Give him a follow on all the social medias. Dante Basco?
Yeah, Dante Basco on everything. Except for TikTok, at Dante on TikTok.
All right, guys, keep booming and booping.